Archibald Joseph Cronin. A.J. Cronin was a Scottish novelist and physician by profession. His best-known novels are The Citadel, Hatter's Castle, The Keys of the Kingdom, The Stars Look Down, and The Green Years. His strengths as a novelist are his keen observation, graphic description, narrative skill and an unmistakable sympathy for the suffering of fellow human beings. His works combines realism and social criticism. The Serang of Ranaganji is an anecdote from his experience as a surgeon in the Royal Navy during World War I.
The Serang of Ranaganji. Look, my dear. Did you ever in your life see such an absurdly comic creature? A smartly dressed woman, first-class passenger on the Ranaganji, about to sail from Liverpool on the long voyage to Calcutta, made this remark, in a high, well-bred voice, to her companion, as they stood before me on the liner's upper deck. Following her amused gaze, my eyes came to rest upon a squat, very ugly native seaman, with short legs and a large disproportionate head. I recognized him as the Indian Serang, or quartermaster of the ship. He was quietly superintending the crew of Lascars, now completing the loading of baggage. "Looks hardly human," agreed the man, with a superior smile. "Inclines a chap to believe that dear old Darwin was not altogether wrong, eh?" The voyage began favorably in calm, clear weather. We crossed the Bay of Biscay without suffering unduly from the turbulent waters, and soon were through the Strait of Gibraltar, traversing the tranquil Mediterranean, under azure skies. The Ranaganji was a stout old tub, manned by white officers, with an entirely native Indian crew. I was the physician of the ship and was delighted by the balmy breeze and brilliant sunshine. The ship was crowded, packed with passengers, from stem to stern, the usual tourists and pleasure seekers, together with a large number of Anglo-Indian Army officers, many of whom were accompanied by their wives and families. From the first night out there was tremendous gaiety on board. The chief among the social promoters was Miss Job Smith, the woman whom I had overheard on the boat deck the morning of our departure. Madge Job Smith was a thrusting person, obviously over 30, got up in a dashing style to look younger. She was not only a snob but a bore, an assertive bore. We reached port said. Everyone went ashore excitedly, came back with silks, shawls, cigarettes, scents, and jewellery. Then we were through the Red Sea, past the barren rocks of Aden, and out upon the wide Arabian Sea. On the following morning, as I held my consultations in the surgery, adjoining my cabin, the Serang, Hassan, appeared, bringing with him two of his Lascar deckhands. He inclined his head in a respectful salam, and addressed me. His voice was hoarse, yet it had a steady undertone. "Dr. Sahib, I fear these men are sick." The seamen certainly did not look well. They complained of general malaise, of intense headache and racking bone pains. They looked frightened too, as I asked them to strip and began my examination. Both were fevered, with thickly furred tongues and that dry skin, which is nature's gravest warning. And then, to my horror, my palpitating fingers became aware of a scattering of hard little nodules, under the wrist skin of each man. It was an unmistakable symptom of smallpox. Young and inexperienced in my profession, I had not learned to control my feelings. My expression must have altered visibly, for although the serang said nothing, his lined and battered face assumed a look of deeper gravity. Hurriedly, with beating heart, I made my way to the bridge. Captain Hamble was not there, but in the chart room below. He looked up sharply as I burst in. "Sir," my voice broke. "I have to report smallpox on board." Two of the deck hands. I saw his lips draw tightly together. He was a thick-set man of 55, known as a strict disciplinarian, but also as a just and fair-minded officer. "Doctor," he said, drawing up at last and coming close to me, his words unmistakably grim. "Listen, you are in charge of the health of the ship. It's entirely up to you. I can't give you any of my officers. I'm overloaded and understaffed. But I am going to give you the serang. Believe me, he's the finest man I have. You've got to keep this thing from spreading. And what's more, don't let a whisper of it get out, or we'll have a bloody panic." I left the chart room, realizing, with a weakness in my stomach, the desperate responsibility of my position. Here we are, in the middle of the Arabian Sea, 1,500 passengers aboard, no means whatever of vaccinating them, and smallpox, the most deadly contagion in the whole dictionary of disease. Back in the surgery, one of the Lascars was in the grip of violent rigor. I turned from the shivering man to the serang, whose incalculable eyes remained fixed upon me. "We've got to isolate these men. Check on the contacts." There was no sick bay on board, not an inch of available cabin space. Baffled, I looked at the serang, who, undismayed, again turned upon me the full force of his eyes. "We will make a shelter on the afterdeck, Dr. Sahib. Very cool there. With plenty of fresh air. In the stern of the ship, protected from view by a battery of derricks and donkey engines, he set to work. Within an hour, he had erected, with silent efficiency, a large canvas shelter. Mattresses and sheets were then brought up and the two patients were comfortably installed. Our next step was to muster the crew for a thorough medical inspection. One of the stokers, who complained of fever and headache, showed the prodromal nodules with the beginnings of the typical rash. He was isolated with the other cases. And now, who is going to help me attend these men? Hassan glanced at me in surprise. "Why, naturally it is I. You must be careful. This disease is most contagious." "I am not afraid, Dr. Sahib." Together, Hassan and I sponged the patients with permanganate solution, administered to each man a strong antipyretic, hung sheets soaked in disinfectant round the shelter, and set up within this little secret area, a cooking stove where liquids could be heated and simple meals prepared. Next morning, however, brought fresh cause of concern. I found 3 new cases among the deck hands. The men, already segregated, were much worse. And that same afternoon, 4 more of the crew sickened. We now had 10 cases in our makeshift lazaretto. It was a situation to test the strongest nerves. But the Serang, calm and unperturbed, gave me fresh heart. In tending the patients, he was indefatigable. "Be careful of yourself," I had to beg him. "Do not go quite so close." Now he showed his strong teeth, in a sudden, fleeting smile. "Are you careful of yourself, Dr. Sahib?" "Indeed I am. Besides, this is my work." "Do not worry, Dr. Sahib. I am strong. And it is my work too." I was so weighed down by responsibility that I had slight concern for myself. Although we were moving full stream ahead, Colombo, the nearest port of call, was still 8 days away. In the course of the next 48 hours, 4 more stokers went to join the others, on the after deck. A total of 14 now. And one of the earlier victims had lapsed into a coma, seemed likely to die at any hour. Under this added load, I could not sleep. And there, where I knew I should find him, watchful and mute under the stars, was the Serang. How shall I describe the solace which flowed towards me from him as he stood there in meditation, with his long arms folded on his bare chest, motionless as a statue? When a sick man groaned faintly, he would step forward, without sound, to succor him. And then, returning, he would fold his arms, while the ship surged slowly forward. Hassan had no fondness for speech. But despite the silence of our long night vigils, I gathered some fragments of his history. He was from Punjab, whence his parents had wandered to southern India. There, like so many in the coastal area, he had taken to a seafaring life. For nearly 40 years, he had given himself to the oceans of the world, and 15 of these years had been spent in the Ranaganji. Indeed, he had no place on the shore, neither family nor friends in the great land mass of India. He had never married. By religion he was a Muslim. All his life he had acquired nothing, neither property nor money. His few possessions, contained in his ship's chest, might be worth a few rupees. The thought hurt me, and in an access of mistaken sympathy, I exclaimed, "Hassan, you are doing so much in this emergency, the company must give you extra pay." His forehead creased perplexedly. He was silent for a long moment. Then he answered, "What use is money, Dr. Sahib, to one who has all he needs? I am well enough the way I am." He was unmistakably sincere, completely detached from the usual hope of reward. Money had no interest for him, he had always despised it. Instead he had courage, self-control, and faith. The men he worked among, lived poor and died poor. It had become the habit of his mind to disregard tomorrow. Standing with him, in the liquid moonlight, I was stung by a strange pang. Besides his clear simplicity, the world's values suddenly seemed dross. A great party had started in the saloon. Indeed, as I viewed my own outlook towards the future, my passionate desire for success and wealth, I was conscious of a secret shame. On the following day, we lost 2 of our patients. It was Hassan himself, who sewed their shrouds. Who in his hoarse and hollow voice, read aloud a short passage from the Ramayana, before their bodies, wrapped in sailcloth, with a weight at their feet, were cast overboard at midnight. No fresh case developed. And a week later, we anchored off Colombo. Soon, the sick men had been taken off to hospital. Several of the patients showed signs of having passed the crisis. But 3, helpless and delirious, a mass of running sores, were carried in the arms of Hassan. As we stood together, I saw that the Serang's dark cheeks were wet with tears. Our passage through the Bay of Bengal was brief and uneventful. I had barely time to recover myself, or to realize that the epidemic had been confined, before we were anchored alongside the quay at Calcutta. Suddenly, at my elbow, I heard the familiar shrilling of Miss Jope Smith. "Oh, look, look, Ronnie. There's that absurd creature again." Once more I followed their united gaze. And there again, down in the afterhold, knocking out the hatch battens to unload the baggage, was the object of their mirth, Hassan. The huntress from Cheltenham swung round, bent her wit, her fascinations upon me. "Where did you keep him during the entire voyage, doctor dear?" "In a special cage." Silence. A vision of the Serang's nobility rising before me. Yes, in a way it was a cage. But isn't it queer, Miss Jope Smith? The animals were all outside.